You're watching the Transnet podcast. We're coming to you from the Investing in Africa Mining Indaba 2026. And we have the opportunity to speak to the newest kid on the block in the Transnet group, and that is the Transnet Railway Infrastructure Manager. And I'm joined by the Chief Executive of TRIM, as it is called, and that is Mr. Moshe Motlohi. Mr. Motlohi, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much for joining us. Tell us a bit more about this new addition in the Transnet family. It is, we understand, a outcome of policy evolution. Give us a bit more of that context.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Maybe there's a context that was given that for all these years preceding last year, railway operation has been run by the state, which was deemed as monopoly. Over time, we had challenges with funding and maintenance of the infrastructure. That led to us losing market share in global markets when it talks to export. Even we're losing on the import side, where our infrastructure, our fleet was just not making it. Government therefore took the decision that there needed to be a focus on the infrastructure management. There also needed to be a focus on bringing in third parties so that customers can have an option of choosing whoever will give them the best price and service and best quality. TRIM was therefore conceived with the purpose of focusing on the infrastructure rehabilitation, secondly, bringing third parties or giving them access. We have done that. Last year, 1st of April, we set up formally as an operating division. We were then having some work that we started doing where we came up with a network statement that for the first time opened access to whoever wanted to participate. By that period, at the end of that exercise, we had identified 11 operators that potentially can run in the system. We did not share the names for one reason, that there were few aspects that we needed to tie up on the contractual side of things. So next month or so, we're going to be sharing those names and say who are those operators that have now complied everything else to come in. And the intention really here is for TRIM to focus purely on the rehabilitation of the network. That has got sub-components. It's the payway that you have to do. It's the electrification of the line, security, signaling. Then you have this other part of saying, bring parties. But if we bring different parties that compete, we need to have a regulatory framework that is not going to stifle competition. They come in, we tell them the rules of engagement. But our view really is to increase the tonnage that goes through our network so that South Africa can have a fighting chance and hit those international markets. And we know when we do this, we're able to impact how the economy performs. I always make an example that in 2024-25 financially, the Minister of Finance cited that the country had a tax deficit of 60 billion rands. Now, when we drill down and say, what contribution have we made into that? We realize that actually the mining sector had said that they had lost 200 billion rands of sales. Now, if you're looking at that 200 billion rands of sales, take 27% of that amount, we realize that it is actually a lot of money, is 54 billion rands. Meaning,
Could plug that.
yeah, from that 60, you would have then be left with only 6 billion, because 54 would have come from this, and that would have come from other services that benefit from this. So we started having a serious look at ourselves and say, we don't want a repeat of this. We've got a bigger impact for now the country performs. Hence, we had to focus on this. We looked at different things that we needed to do because we're inheriting this aging infrastructure, declining volumes, no funding. So we had to open mandates and say, from a funding point of view, you cannot rely only on one source of funding. Let's look at the multi-funding strategies, ranging from us making money from services, us making money from grants, from loans, and few other things. And we also had to look at railway at land that is lying item. We needed to bring that land in so that as we rehabilitate the infrastructure, we're able to bring some add-ons that make the logistics sector thrive, like setting up industrial parks along the railway line, because we firmly believe if you set those, you are able to enable these train operating companies to move more cargo. And when you do this, you deal with another problem, because railway by other people has been seen as a competition to trucks, which is not true. So our view is say these parks are going to be the centers where the trucks will run from source to consultation points, then everything from there gets onto train. So everybody has got a place to occupy within this chain. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay. But I want to get into the network statement, and we'll do that shortly. But maybe just for my benefit and those of the people that are watching us, when you say you are an infrastructure manager, you like the landlord.
Yep.
And you are seized with the security, the electricity upgrades, and all of that. And then your tenants would be all manner of operators who run kind of carriages, locomotives on the line, including Transnet Freight Rail, I would imagine. Is that a correct understanding?
Yeah, you put it right. The TFR becomes our tenant as well. And we're going to treat them the same way we treat any other operator in terms of the system, so that we really create an enabling environment for competition to thrive and for South Africa to benefit. And our orientation is simple. If it is good for the country, it should be good for the users of the network. Then Transnet should be the last one to benefit out of that.
Yesterday, at one of the sessions here, Minister Creasy made a very interesting observation about the network statement. And you did say this network statement will imminently be shared with the public. But she said something interesting. She said the network statement is the menu and the pricing of the options. So it's a menu of what kind of rooms in the landlord's house are available, and the terms on which those are available. Tell us a bit more about that.
Look, because we're running a number of channels or corridors, each of those corridors has got some finite capacity. So when she talks about the rooms and the menu, we know that we cannot say all of them will take 10 new entrants. We look at the current capacity of each of the corridors and then say, how many new operators can we bring? That's what we've then come up with. We also have looked at how much gets spent in terms of upgrading that same network. We have applied to the economic regulator, the interim one, who say this is the amount of money we want, which talks to pricing. Then they evaluate our claim against what the industry pushes back, and then make a determination of saying this is the amount that is fair for this. So if you want to get some corridors will be a little bit much more expensive to run compared to others based on the determination that has been made. Because we've got heavy haul, we've got the one where you run the trains that are not that heavy. So the pricing therefore is not the same. Density of cargo and demand, it all differs.
And then in terms of the obligations that would be put on the tenants, what would those be?
Yes, it starts from like a basic principles of saying, if you have a rental with us, you must pay. Second, with their environmental rules that must be observed, labor practices that must be observed. So the entire universe of statutory compliance, we're not going to be soft on it, because we should only house good corporate citizens on our land so that we can assist government to achieve their own objective. Issues of transformation, all those will come in. And that's what really means. We're going to look at this. And if you promise that your train is going to run X number of hours to one point to the other, it better do that. If it doesn't, then we'll have a conversation and say, this is killing the flow of cargo on this network. So we're going to have an oversight on all those components, because we don't want these different operators tripping each other. There has to be a smooth, even flow of cargo.
Okay, so you guys are also playing this role as a coordinator of all of this cargo that is moving across your corridors.
Definitely, we're doing that. It's one of our functions.
Okay, you mentioned earlier that you have got 11 people who, in line with the network statement, have been given slots, as you call it, or access to the infrastructure. I'm interested in two related issues there. The one is kind of what is your sense of how those people are kitting up to be ready to make use of the opportunity? And then I think the second one is, as it relates to their participation, which priority corridors have those people expressed an interest in?
Look, I will partially answer the first question, was at this stage, I don't want to discuss.
Oh, you can't really say, okay.
Yeah, but there are different stages of progress. What we have done, we've mapped up the project plans towards conclusion of these agreements. So, and we have a sense of how long it should take for them to get in there. If I were to make an example, when you run Comrades Marathon, they know that if you don't pass point A, you better drop off the pass. Right? They will give you those. So we put the same principle that the commercial team is driving, where we're tracking, but we're happy to say all of them for now, they seem to be in the game.
Okay.
But others have already hit the finish line. We're going to announce that soon as to who has hit that. That's one part. And from therefore, there's a second leg, the acquisition of the rolling stock. That is going to be done and be endorsed by a rail safety regulator, because when they bring fleet in here, it has to comply with our safety standards, environmental standard, and any other standard for that matter, so that it gets approved by everyone. We do not want to have conflict at the point of delivery. So we have that, and what we are seeing is promising, and yeah.
All right. You're a landlord. And as a landlord, you are making sense of which areas in your infrastructure are in greatest need of upgrading. You've mentioned a few things. You've mentioned the lines themselves, the overhead electricity, and many other elements. Talk to us just in a general way about some of the upgrades that now become your responsibility and that you're going to be prioritizing over the next while.
For us, we've got more than 20,000 kilometers of railway. But what we have then done was to look at only 6 main corridors for now in terms of priority, which is the Northeast Corridor, the one that moves from Phalaborwa to Richards Bay, Maputo, and Swaziland, right? The other one is North Corridor. Mostly it moves coal to Richards Bay. There's a Container Corridor, Natal Corridor, like from Gauteng to Port of Durban, the third one. We put a corridor that runs to the Cape, that will do Magalhães, and then there's one that runs around Gauteng, Fort Central corridor. There's the other one that runs from Sishen to Santana. Those are the priority corridors that you want to get in them. And what we've done, there are different stages of, if you like, health in terms of the condition.
Yes.
We have started now working with industry where we put the scanning of infrastructure, started with the coal corridor, where we ran this machine that pinpointed exactly the condition of each of these subcomponents of the network. And it tells you the exact location that if you go to kilometer 1.1, we'll find that the sleepers are broken, or the clamps are off, or the rail is breaking or about to break.
It's like a diagnostic.
Yes, and it pinpoints. Now that tool we have lighted was, it informs our maintenance plan. We're not going to be doing finder. We know exactly where to go. And the beauty, you can go make your own intervention. After that, we run the same machine to check if they progress. And we are firmly of the view that it's going to help us to limit or eliminate the derailments. And even before doing that, we had already started doing the annual shuts where we're using our own inspection tools that were not sophisticated. Of course, some of them, little bit of technology, but mostly dependent on people, where we were fixing areas that were glaringly needing attention. And I'm happy to sit here and say, in all the 6 corridors, we have come out tops in terms of having improved their system. Richards Bay Coal Terminal, their annual year starts January to December. They posted 10.7% growth on volumes because we've been doing these interventions. And we also have been using that corridor to try a number of things, because besides the fact that the infrastructure is aging, there's been issues of theft. So we had to find a security intervention that we had jointly collaborated with customers. It was when we looked at that universe of crime, we realized it's not only about the guy who goes and cuts, it's about the guy who exports that product. Somebody cuts it, somebody stores it, then somebody burns it, then somebody ultimately exports. So we had to look and say, how do you win this war? Our approach has been, if we choose those small guys who are stealing, we're not going to be successful. We have to starve the oxygen. Then we started working on intelligent freelance security system, which was targeting the exporters, working with SARS, SAPS, NPA, and we're starting to make inroads. And it's important to know that some positive developments do fit into undesired happenings, if you like, because we go for electrical creators. We supply more on copper. Now the copper is in demand, the price has gone up, and then this fits into this. Everyone wants these EVs to come in, but now somebody has seen an opportunity. So we manage in that dynamics, but I'm happy to say on the North Corridor, the previous year, we lost 189 kilometers of cable. Because of this system intervention, last year, we lost only 59 kilometers from 2 times comrade marathon distance to where you are below 60 kilometers. And we're excited you can see the trend. As a result of that, the number of trains cancelled there started reducing, more trains put on the system. And it's not only a security intervention, there's maintenance, there's security, a lot of engaging communities and our employees.
Are you finding that you're having to deploy a lot of technology, whether that is on the kind of crime prevention side, to the signaling, to the monitoring, as you say, in an intelligence-driven way of copper theft and so on? And if so, what are you learning from deployment of technology on legacy infrastructure?
Look, we have to embrace technology. This is clear because your drones will help you to quickly have an eagle's eye view of what's happening in the situation. It can be able, if you have facial recognition, to identify usual suspect. You can use number plate recognition and say it's the same vehicle. So we need to use this. We've got a change management process that we have to undertake because that does cause fear on the humans that are working in the system. And I've got a philosophy that says we are in a people business that manage railway.
That happens to manage
the railway. Yeah, because if I just say you are in a railway business, people will feel that every intervention is not sensitive to their needs. So we take them on board and explain where the opportunities, how do you reskill them to the part of this. We're seeing this. Then there's that technology that we have to use, the one that is detecting what is happening on the railway itself. Also replacing the attractive copper with the one that is not attractive.
Yes.
So all these interventions are needed so that we can get into this space. We have also taken a decision that the fiber that we have, telecoms fiber.
Oh, yes.
Some of it will give it to provinces because we have to win their hearts and minds of communities. If they do get free Wi-Fi, their allegiance to trim starts increasing.
Wow.
Because young people will then say, I know I've got data. Now if we were to come up with a new hierarchy of needs, data is at the very basic.
Maslow.
Yeah. If we don't have data, like you said, I don't have food. So we want to get into that space and make sure that everyone understands what we do.
You as an entity, precisely because you manage such a vast and a sprawling network, also happen to be sitting on some of the best real estate in the country. You mentioned the point about industrial parks earlier on. You've just mentioned the one of leveraging some of your connectivity infrastructure as well. Those seem to me to be opportunities that are incidental to your main business.
Yep.
Some thoughts on this, and which corridors, in your view, do you think are likely to yield a lot more of those spin-offs?
Look, if you're looking at the 6 corridors that we have looked at, for example, they all have sprawling mines.
Yes.
And those are operated by junior or emerging miners. So they need a point of consultation for them to be able to order the full train that can move. So we have identified, we've gone out to market with some of the sightings that we've identified. On the north, across the country, we've identified few of those, and we know that they're going to modernize how our railway system is. It's just going to be like the other ones that are leading in the world, where they've got this solution that takes care of this.
It's so interesting to me when you put it that way, because often when we think of the reform, we just think about the locomotive carrying goods.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that the reform is also about changing how customers, both large and small, begin to interact with yourselves as Transnet.
Definitely. There's an African saying that says, if a cat wants to be a lion, that cat must drop the appetite of rats.
Of rats?
Yeah. Because you cannot then be a lion if you still want to eat rats. So we decided to say, we are going to have that big appetite of a lion, chasing big prey for us to be this. So we're going big on real estate. We have said, in principle, anything that is adjacent to where railway line runs is ours. Let's go and monetize this and see what value add can you bring in. Because once we have those activities, it also curbs crime. We've got people that have got vested interest in making sure that the system works. Across the length and breadth of our country, there are abandoned stations. Those really could be monetized. You bring them in and they help us. And between me and you, real estate is a portfolio that is not regulated by IRF, right? So we can charge market-related thing without going to ask somebody for permission. As long as the industry is prepared to pay, we can do that. And I like it that way, so that it does give us flexibility of doing things like all other businesses are doing. Partnering is key. There are things that we know but we cannot do. There are companies that are running big real estate setups. We're going to reach out to them and understand how they do it. How does both coin monetize things? So it's something that we have to look at.
Yeah. You know, the other element that I'm interested in hearing your reflections on, Mr. Motlohi, is Transnet as a lead firm in the provision of freight logistics services also has a massive potential to improve the industrial profile of the country, not just in terms of what you ferry, but even in your own requirements. What have you seen in the last 9 to 10 months in the role that says to you, here are some opportunities where our own decisions could contribute beyond just the main service that we provide? Yeah.
Look, when we look at things as big things, that we just need a big railway. But once we start breaking some of the things into subcomponents, we see opportunities. I'll make an example. We also do have some locomotives that we're using for moving materials.
Okay.
They do use parts that have got some components. Some of them would need washers. I've seen this thing when I visited one industry. They break it apart and say, for you to put together a starter, we need a washer, we need a bolt, we need this. Those other sub parts, we can actually localize that in South Africa so that you are not dependent on external people to supply everything. Because if we're going to look at big things, we're making this industrialization to be a pie in the sky. Bring it to the level where local people can engage and interact with the products that they can make so that they can contribute towards this. So there are opportunities really where we can begin to do things and prescribe and say, we want this to come here because it is doable.
Yeah.
Fasteners, for example, those things can be locally manufactured. I don't see anything complex about them. And you need to get into that space.
Yeah. Last question. Change is a difficult process. One of the things that the freight logistics roadmap flags is this integration of staff between TFR and the new trim and creating an iron wall or a Chinese wall, as some people say. Less than a year in, what is your feeling about that and how some of your best assets, your people, are managing the change?
I think we've performed fairly well. Of course, it's difficult. Remember, for as long as this company has been in existence, we were one family.
Yes.
So that moment of change always needed a reminder to constantly say, let's remember to do this. We had run a project where we're doing these Chinese walls, telling people that we don't say go beat up TFR and still relate to them, but you cannot share this information. When you make decision, it's not about how it impacts TFR only. It's about how it impacts the country and other customers. So you should not be disclosing this information now to somebody who does not have to see this. And it has been well considered to work with the unions going throughout all our depots to tell them that this is here. And again, we have been saying, TRIM has not been part of privatization though. That was the biggest fear, which was blocking the change message. That TRIM remains state company. All the rail infrastructure remains in the hands of a state. Nothing has changed. So if anything, no privatization. Instead, we're using state assets to say people who want to come, they should come and do well. And we're going to guard this infrastructure on behalf of government. It's a long journey that we have to undertake. But I'm comfortable with what I've seen coming. And it has been difficult on both sides. At times I would see colleagues having forgotten that they are not supposed to be giving orders to these colleagues because they are no longer reporting to them. And it is to be expected. But I think the team have taken it well. At this conference, on a lighter note, I've seen how much TFR and TRIM colleagues are enjoying themselves. And they still say, look, Chinese walls, but they have fun. And I like that spirit because when we put third parties coming in, we must have fun with our customers because it's going to be about how we treat them, how we make them feel that they're going to be loyal to us. So our biggest client right now is TFR. We need to treat them like that. When others come in, we must also treat them as our client because we want the economy to go.
Hlekazi, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. I hope you can stick around and join us for our discussion with the chair in the next few minutes. But thank you so much for taking time to speak to us.
Thank you. Much appreciated.